All right. Welcome, everybody, to Growing School Food and Food Literacy in School Gardens. My name's Jacob, and I'll be co-facilitating this evening. I'm a PhD student in educational studies at Lakehead University in Aurelia, as well as a local farmer and coordinator at the Lakehead Farm Lab. I also co-chair the Simcoe County Food Council School Food Working Table, both of which are co-hosting this evening tonight, which is the first part of our Simcoe County School Food series. So we're excited to have you. It may actually be our second one. There was one in the last fall, but we'll count this one as the first of our new series. And yeah, we're recording this meeting, so encourage you to be mindful and respectful of others in that sense. Also, to submit any questions you have or contribute any questions you have into the chat as they arise, and we'll get to them in the end, at the end of our presentations this evening. And also introduce yourself. We'd love to know who you are and what you're up to. Okay. So before we get going, I just wanted to talk a bit about the land that we're on and the history of the land that we're on, as it has deep resonance for our talk around school food. So myself, I'm of a first generation Canadian settler background. I'm also a farmer in the area on land that is deeply meaningful to me. And as I've grown up on this land, I've learned a lot about the history of the land and of the people of this land. And I've been incredibly inspired and moved by what I've learned. And in particular, this land that I'm on is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Anishinaabeg and other diverse Indigenous peoples and cultures that have existed here since time immemorial. And in particular, in the Aurelia area, we're surrounded by water. And where these two lakes meet, Lake Simcoe and Lake Couchiching, is the Narrows, or in other folks know it as Minjickening, where there's the fish fence, where people have gathered for over 5,000 years to harvest fish and connect and learn and celebrate life. And in this place, there's a deep and complicated history as it pertains to both education and food systems, and our relationships with one another. So I wanted just to situate us in this context, and the work that we do at Farm Lab and through the Simcoe County Food Council is deeply committed to truth and reconciliation, and also living and working in right relations. And I also wanted to share this picture of the Wigwasate Gitagan, or the birch tree garden at Lakehead University. This is of our campus in Aurelia. And a photo, an early morning sunrise photo taken by Alicia Wasagijig, who was at one time the Indigenous Initiatives coordinator there. And this is a space that we spend lots of time at Lakehead outside learning with Indigenous elders. Tomorrow morning, there will be the annual teepee raising ceremony, so I'm looking forward to that, and other opportunities to learn as we go. Okay. So this is the agenda for the evening. I'm going to pass it over to Heather shortly, and she can introduce herself and introduce more of our school food working table and some of the broader context that we operate in. And then we'll move into some of our presentations for the evening. We're going to be learning about curriculum integrations of garden-based learning and food literacy through science, math, and French language learning perspectives. And then we'll get into a question and answer, discussion, and conclusion, and we'll have a hard end at 8:15, maybe a soft ending earlier than that if we get through it. But if not, we thank you for your patience in sticking with it. Okay. Without further ado, over to you, Heather.
Cool. Thank you, Jacob. So my name's Heather Toma, and I'm here tonight with multiple hats on. First, as a member of the Simcoe School Food Working Table, which is part of the Simcoe County Food Council. And the School Food Working Table is looking at ways to bring together school food programs across Simcoe County to support each other. There are a lot of diverse types of school food programs. Are you able to hear me okay? Okay, great. Um, Across the county, and we really want to be able to look at the 4 Ps. We love this. So food providing, food production, food preparation, and food pedagogy. So how do these different layers integrate into different types of programs? And so the School Food Working Table has members who are from school staff and school boards and nonprofit organizations that are working with food, direct program providers, individuals who just are interested in the topic, and everyone is welcome. If you're interested in more of what you experienced tonight, then you can find out more. We're looking at support for school gardens and Eat Well to Excel programs, which are the breakfast and snack programs, curriculum, culinary, and youth leadership. So we have been meeting monthly, not so much during the summer, but during the school year, and offering webinars like this, and really interested in looking at some collaborative projects with different food related groups across the county. And we'll be sharing the slides, I think, from this presentation. So you'll be able to get the link for the Simcoe County Food Council, which is the larger umbrella for the working table that has several different working groups, and the school food group is one of those. And then the other hat that I'm wearing tonight is the Coalition for Healthy School Food has an Ontario chapter, and the chapter of the coalition is doing similar work but on a provincial level. So that encompasses over 100 organizations across Ontario as members and endorsers, and several groups from within Simcoe County are members, folks who are the Simcoe County Food Council and the Sharing Place and the Karma Project. So lots of different groups are participating in this. And again, it's diverse number of groups. And at the coalition, we're doing advocacy with decision makers to try and increase more support for all of these types of groups. So more funding and better policies to make this work easier so that it can happen everywhere. Lots of knowledge sharing work and just making connections and cross-pollinating between organizations across the sectors. We've just finished a provincial visioning process to help strengthen the diversity within the school food ecosystem. And we're part of a national coalition of over 500 members and endorsers who are working in all the provinces and territories across the country. So it's really inspiring to know that the work that's happening here in Simcoe that you're going to hear about tonight is part of a broad national network. So it's great to, yeah, if you're interested in finding out more about the provincial or the national work, after you get inspired by what's happening at the county, there's ways to get involved there. So thanks very much. And I'm glad to be participating tonight.
Thanks, Heather. And just real quick, this is from our registration. We had over 60 people register for this evening. So I was really interested to see the cross section of people. So building off of Heather's discussion of our working table, we see people coming from all kinds of different backgrounds: teachers, students, public health, agriculture, the nonprofit sector, and other public sectors. So just wanted to share that with you. It's a diverse collection of people coming together, all in support of school food. And the reason we do that is is for many reasons we do this, but for one of the big reasons is the situation going on in our schools in terms of student hunger, and school food is one response to student hunger, one of many responses. But if you know, according to some of our local trustees here, we can't do anything else for our students if they're not fed. How are we going to educate them? How can they strive for success if they're hungry? And this is in the broader context of food insecurity in our community here in Simcoe North. We have um, above average rates of student food insecurity um, within our county and within our province. And estimates are up to a third of households are experiencing food insecurity. And some estimates here, less than half of students reported having breakfast before going to school, and thousands going to school or going to bed hungry. Um, And so this is a situation that needs resolution rapidly. And further context is advocates, especially through the coalition and through society, have been successful in reintegrating food literacy into the Ontario curriculum, so which is now a cross-curricular expectation for the science and technology curriculum in K-8. And Sustain Ontario has produced an excellent uh, web library of resources called Food is Science and hands-on tools for teaching science. So these are linked, and we'll also be sharing links at the end of the webinar as well. And further in this context, so within the context of a national school food program, Ontario's new food literacy curriculum, and our work at Lakehead University. If you don't know, Lakehead University has a small campus in Aurelia. One of our main programs is education. And so a number of us here on the call work or study at Lakehead. I think all of us actually, with the exception of Heather, actually were at one time or are currently students at Lakehead University in one of several different educational programs. And so that's what's brought us here together tonight is our shared passion for learning, and in particular, garden-based learning. And so with that, we've kind of come together and we've formed what we call the Farm Lab. And so we've been cultivating an ecosystem for school food and garden-based learning. And so the Farm Lab is an actual site at Lakehead campus in Aurelia. We envision it as an agroecological learning commons. It's both a classroom, a laboratory for experimentation and research, but also just a gathering space. We're lucky to be funded by an NSERC Promo Science grant focusing on science education with K to 12 schools in our area. And we're focusing on cultivating a community of practice. So bringing together different researchers and practitioners and community members to really support one another in exploring, bringing food, growing food in schools. And so we do that through direct teacher consultation and school consultations. We also do that through integration with our various Bachelor of Education programs. So for in-service and pre-service teachers. And we do that through our continuing efforts at research and advocating for supportive policies and procedures to make it easier for teachers and educators to bring food in schools and start gardening in their schools, and also sharing resources. So whether that's seeds or soil or compost or tools or tips or lesson plans, we've been gathering and generating a collection of resources that we're happy to share. We also host field trips to the Farm Lab. Tomorrow there's a school group coming. I'm excited to see them there at the university. And we also do community programs. And we're drawing inspiration from other similar programs that happen at different universities that bring together garden-based educators together, such as Life Lab and the Learning Gardens Laboratory and the work going on at Orchard Garden at UBC. And something that we've learned through our research, I myself, I did a master's thesis, my master's of education on garden-based learning. And oftentimes we hear about, garden projects being led by champions. Typically, a lot of our school food, school garden programs are led by champions. And kudos to the champions out there who put their blood, sweat, and tears and their passion into these initiatives. But it can't all be on one person. And as an illustration of that, I wanted to share this a picture of a champion collard. It's a variety of collards named champion because of its cold hardiness and its ability to thrive through cold, treacherous conditions. And this is a picture of the collards tinged pink from the frost in the cold in January 2024. So I was harvesting this in the winter, climate change. And it was beautiful. But like most of us champions, eventually, we become Volscat. And a month later, the champion collards out in the field, out on its own, was devoured by voles. It was a target and it was devoured, and now it's cycled back into the earth. And so we're trying to move away from this idea that it has to be all on the shoulders of one person or one passionate teacher in order to do all this, and really like build a team, build an ecosystem that's resilient to the various shocks and the various issues that can arise so that we can have long-term success and sustainability in our programs. All right, now with that, I'm going to pass it over to Lindsay.
Thanks, Jacob. I love the metaphor. Hello, everyone. My name is Lindsay Sargent. I'm a sessional instructor at Lakehead University in the Faculty of Education, and I'm also a garden-based educator with Farm Lab. It's really exciting to see everyone here tonight, these relationships and these collaborations that are forming across organizations and communities, everyone working together to create these learning spaces that connect youth with local food and local food systems. So thank you. We really appreciate everyone being here tonight and for all of you being a part of this. I'm going to start off with sharing a hands-on science activity that we're developing at Farm Lab that connects students with local seeds and gardens and is adaptable to most grade levels. Then I'm going to touch on a few more garden activities that are connected with the Ontario science curriculum throughout all 4 seasons. So this first activity, we playfully call it the Beyond the Bean experiment. I want to start out with sharing a little bit of context. So at Farm Lab, we're trying to move beyond the typical bean growing experiment. That experiment that many of us likely participated in as students when we were in elementary school. Many of us, myself included, as educators likely ran similar experiments with students in our classrooms, where all the students grow bean plants to investigate maybe the stages of plant growth in grade 3, or perhaps to apply the science experimentation process in later grades, focusing on that strand A, where we're conducting investigations and manipulating variables, maybe manipulating the amount of light or the amount of water that seeds get to see its effect on the bean plant growth. So while the typical bean experiment is wonderful, it's hands-on science and it models the experimentation process really well, what we were noticing was that some or many of the students' bean seeds don't actually grow. The ones that are being manipulated, the variable that's being manipulated, perhaps being starved of light or water, some seeds are dying, and perhaps beans are planted on a school windowsill and then they're left over a weekend or a long weekend or maybe a school break and they're not watered or cared for. So we were wondering what message this was sending to students about how we value seeds and how we value food. Also, why only beans in the experiments? They're certainly fast and easy to grow, and I think the thought is that many students will experience success in growing a plant. But is science supposed to be fast and easy? Is that the message that we want to be sending about science? And finally, we were wondering what insight or information students gained from participating in these bean experiments and how it extended beyond the classroom and into the real world. So with these questions in mind and inspired by the article that you see linked there on your screen, Indigenous Knowledges and the Story of the Bean by Brayboy and Mon, which I highly encourage everyone to read if you get a chance, we developed a seed germination experiment where students participate as citizen scientists in producing meaningful science knowledge that serves the broader community. I'm going to briefly describe this activity and how to run it. It's an activity that Farm Lab can come in and support in classrooms, or it can be run entirely by educators in conjunction with their own local seed libraries. So to start off the activity, we bring in a wide variety of seed sets that have been donated or collected for the Lakehead Seed Library. And we spread these over the tables in the classrooms and give students a chance to explore the different varieties of seeds. They ask questions, they share their seed stories from their families and communities, and share their seed knowledge. And then we present them with a real problem. We say, these seeds need to get out of these boxes and they need to get off the shelves of the library and into the hands of school gardeners and community members so they can be planted and they can grow up into the plants that they will become. So more seeds can be produced and collected and food can be grown, and this whole cycle, this whole beautiful cycle can continue. But seeds lose their viability, their ability to grow over time. And we don't want to give seed packages out to people to plant without knowing that they're viable. We discuss with students that seeds are gifts and that they shouldn't be wasted just sitting here on the shelf. They need to get out into the hands of gardeners. So we need the students' help. The students become citizen scientists and they each select a seed set to germinate in order to determine its germination rate. And they record this for future planters. Knowing the germination rate of a set of seeds is very important because it helps us know how many seeds need to be planted in order to get a good harvest. For example, if I wanted to plant carrots, I might look on the seed package or in a database to see the germination rate of the seeds. And if it's only 50%, I know I need to plant 100 seeds to get approximately 50 carrots because only 50% of the seeds are viable. So it's really important information for gardeners to have. So students start by researching what conditions their seeds need for germination. And they set up germination tests with moist paper towels and containers around the classrooms to see how many seeds in their set germinate successfully. And then they use this to calculate the germination rate. You can see that equation there on your screen. And they also research the needs, the growing habits, the cultural uses, the names in various languages of their seeds. And they add this information, plus those germination rates, to the Lakehead Seed Library database, which is also linked there on your screen. And it's accessible on the Farm Lab website. So this information is all stored in this database, this living database, and other gardeners and schools can access it and learn about the seeds that are in the library that they might be planting. So one thing that we like to do at Farm Lab is provide lots of seeds to community members and to schools for growing. So all of that information about those seeds is linked in this database. And so through the process, students really get to know and value the seeds that they're working with. And it's interesting because success doesn't necessarily mean getting all your seeds to grow. It means finding out valuable information to share with the community, valuable science information. Next slide there, please, Jacob. So seed germination testing is only one science activity that's connected with gardening and local food systems. At Farm Lab, we're really trying to encourage students and educators to see the garden as a year-round community-connected learning space. So science connected with the garden addresses real-life problems, such as food security and building collective food knowledge together. And when students participate in seed, plant, and food-related processes in the context of school gardens and in community gardens, and in local parks and fields and forests, seeds and plants and students aren't abstracted or extracted from their natural cyclical growing patterns for the sake of learning or for the sake of learning science. Students are active participants in the process that contribute to the well-being of the whole community, where seeds and plants are honored as gifts and learning is place-based and follows the seasons. These elements are generally consistent with Indigenous ways of knowing, and in my mind are important to embed in science education that takes place on treaty land. So I'm going to end off on the next slide, please, Jacob, with a quick look at a few examples of seasonal garden-based activities that connect with science curriculums across most grades. And you'll notice that at the center of this circular seasonal chart that you see there on your screen are the words time and ongoing relationships. And learning over time and in ongoing relationships with people and land is very important in building student confidence, connection, and contextual knowledge. This is why we advocate for garden-based learning and food literacy, and that it should take place and continue in all seasons. It not only takes place in, say, the spring, when it's time to plant seeds and seedlings, but that students need to experience and see and feel and taste and hear all aspects of the whole food plant growing cycle year-round. So for example, in the fall, students can collect and save and clean seeds. And there's a link there on your screen to a YouTube video that we made at Farm Lab that will show how to do that seed saving and seed cleaning. They can also participate in food storing and preserving processes. And then the wintertime is a good time to sort your seeds, look at seeds, what seeds you have in your collection for next year, do those germination experiments and test and make garden plans where students might look at where certain plants should be planted in a garden, how they can support one another, their needs sun-wise and water-wise. And then in the spring, the land starts to send us signals to begin preparing the soil for seed planting and seedling planting. We can learn how to ID plants that are growing in our area and learn about their uses. For example, the maple sugaring process. And then summertime is a tricky time. We need the help of all members of the community to help with the garden and the harvesting of the food, the eating of the food, and in developing strategies to ensure that the harvest in the garden doesn't get eaten by insects or maybe rabbits that we share the land with. And so all of these garden and food related activities involve communication, they involve research skills, observation, planning, testing, and all of those skills are science skills. So I'm going to end it off there. And if you would like some more information on how you can run any of these activities in your classrooms for all the teachers in the crowd here, or how to adapt them to certain grade levels, please reach out to us at Farm Lab. And I'm going to pass it over right now to my friend Linda.
Thank you, Lindsay. That was amazing. Such a good presentation so far. I think one of the things that comes up a lot with teachers and gardening is that if you can't connect the garden to the curriculum, then you're not going to use it as much. And those were all such good ideas. And it reminded, I wish I had thought about this earlier because I didn't include it in my slides. But I've been working with Jason Kerr. I don't know if he's here tonight, and Gary Plume, who I think is here tonight. And I've done some activities with Jason's class and my Lakehead class. I teach education. Oh, you're here. Yay. I teach math education in the Lakehead program. And I also am a garden-based educator at the Farm Lab. And Jason and I met through community gardening, and he invited me to come to his class at Harriet Todd and work with his students with my teacher candidates learning math. And I don't have the slides in here, but we did do some really cool activities in January around seeds. We had kids counting seeds with different kinds of skip counting. And then we graphed the seeds to show that there were more seeds in certain packages and less seeds in some, and that was actually connected proportionately to the size of the seeds, which was really interesting. The kids had a really good time. Anyway, one of the things I like to focus on in my math education course is helping students find out how easy it really is to connect math ideas to the garden. So in the last few years, I've been taking them to do our class in the garden, and in the last couple of years with Jason Kerr's class at Harriet Todd. So a couple of the things that are really important. One is to recognize that if we're talking about best practices in math, that there are a few things that really jump out as far as what's considered best practices. One is that allowing math to be a social activity for kids makes a big difference because they can talk to each other, they can help each other with the math, and they can help each other think through the math. So being able to discuss it and work in groups seems to make a big difference. Another thing that's important is that the math have some kind of context so that we're not just giving them numbers out of thin air, 3 + 2 =. We're giving them some sort of story or some manipulatives, something that grounds it in real life. And the garden allows you to do that because it's like a manipulative that comes with the territory. One other thing is that we want kids to be thinking critically when they're doing math in school. You don't want it to be rote. You don't want it to be just memorizing. There's nothing wrong with memorizing, but you want that extra added piece that helps them to get into the deeper thinking and understanding conceptually what math is, because that what that happens then is when they're older, when they're in grade 9 and grade 10, where we lose a lot of students in high school, if they've been taught conceptually in elementary, they'll have an easier time when they get to high school. Algebra will not be as hard for them. The last thing that jumps out is that you want your math program to be differentiated. So you don't want to have, I mean, you can have different programs for different kids in your class, but that's really clunky and hard to manage. And it's almost unrealistic for a teacher. So if you can adapt your math class so that every student in your class can participate in the math, that's ideal. And it just so happens that if you're doing math outside in the garden and kids are working together and they're using manipulatives, it's easier for all the kids in the garden to participate, all the kids in the class to participate. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that in a minute. So before I move on, sorry, Jacob, can you go back a second? Thanks. Just a couple of things about using a garden in a school. There are some plants that are easier to grow in a school garden. There are plants that you can plant early in the spring and harvest before the kids leave at the end of the year. The cold season crops, peas, radishes, lettuce, and kale can be planted and harvested before the kids leave. Garlic is a fun thing to plant because you can plant it in the fall. You might have to harvest it yourself, but you can have the garlic, it lasts a long time, so you can have it there for the kids. And then potatoes are a great one. So kids love planting and harvesting potatoes, and you can often get them harvested in September, planted in June before they leave. They grow really well on their own. They don't need a ton of attention. And they're so much fun for kids to harvest because it's like Christmas. They can guess how many potatoes they're going to dig up, and it's a big surprise digging them out of the ground. Okay, let me see. So some of the things you could connect math-wise to this activity. This is a picture of potatoes that were harvested. Sorry, go backwards. One more, thanks, Jacob. I'm not quite done. Some of the things you could connect to this is having kids guess how many potatoes they think they could they're going to harvest. They could try to figure out what the average of the number of potatoes per plant was. They could try to figure out the mass of the potatoes, the volume of the potatoes. So you can really brainstorm a lot of different things around one garden activity. Okay, Jacob, sorry about that. I appreciate your paying attention to me. Thanks. So this picture is from before we harvested the potatoes. We told the kids that the potatoes had to be planted a certain distance apart, and they had to figure out how many they could fit in the garden bed. So as you can see from this picture, these kids used something called an array, and it shows how differentiation works in this kind of problem-based math. The kids could all attack this problem in different ways depending on what their level of comfort was. So let's say you had a student who didn't know their times tables. They could have the option of just counting all those dots there, or they could count by fives, or they could even take this problem and they could break it up into two smaller problems, 4 times 5 and 4 times 5, and add those two numbers together. So it gives kids lots of different options as to how they can work on the math. And when they're working together, they can help each other work that through. The other thing you can see here is that multiplication is related to addition. So they're learning some of those deep conceptual ideas, and that multiplication is really repeated addition. It can be broken up into parts. And if you have a multiplication question, you can reverse the numbers and you'll still get the same answer. So 5 times 8 is the same as 8 times 5. We move our array. That again helps prepare students for math when they're in grade 9 and 10, because those are those conceptual ideas. At the top there's a link to a problem set. And Jacob, if you could go to the next slide, please. So on the right-hand side is the table of contents for that problem set. This was part of my master's degree, is I made up this set of problems to connect math and gardening. They're multi-grade problems and they're mostly number sense, but please feel free to use them. The link takes you to all the problems. They're connected to the old math curriculum, but it's all still in the new math curriculum. It's still the same, similar stuff. And please feel free to share it if you would like. Let's see, hopefully it will just kind of get you started and get you thinking about how to connect math to gardening and maybe how to connect math to a variety of things that you might do outside with your students. Okay, last slide. If you could go one more, Jake. Thank you very much. So this is some of Jason's kids after we harvested potatoes. You can see that they really had a good time. So one of the things that our teacher candidates learn when we go and work with kids in the garden is that it's a little chaotic. It's a lot of fun, but it's a little chaotic. So I try to encourage them to push themselves outside their comfort zone and to really try to focus on what the kids do learn. They might not always learn what you're trying to teach them, but they will learn some really interesting and important things. And you can always circle back. You can always circle back in the classroom. Remember when we were harvesting the potatoes, and you can go over and connect to the math that you're doing at that point. And I think that's it. We really want to think of kids as being successful in math because they have a good understanding. And this is one way to help kids develop a good understanding of the math. Okay, I'm all done. I think it's Melissa's turn.
Hi there, my name's Melissa and I'm a B.Ed student at Lakehead University. I'm also a garden-based educator with Farm Lab, and I'm currently teaching core French for students in grade 1 to 8. So as a newer educator, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to try a different approach to language acquisition at the elementary level. So what that means is, especially now that the weather is nice, I am primarily teaching French outdoors. Rarely do we have a class inside. So that brings us to why would we teach French outside in a garden? I find that it creates a really engaging environment for students across all levels. I found it to be a really great equalizer for students with varying needs. We all have those busy students or ones that can't sit still, ones that don't do well for worksheets or with IEPs, that maybe don't do a lot of reading and writing. So it's very different to accommodate the differentiations within that outdoor environment. It also shows students that language learning can happen everywhere. One of the big questions I get with students is like, why do I even need to learn French? I'm never going to use it. So I spend a lot of my time outdoors showing them that you can use this anywhere. And you can engage in conversation and in natural conversation and not just those very structured lessons where we're just working on conjugation of verbs. It's a very low prep way to teach, so I'm not printing off worksheets every day. I'm not making huge lesson plans. I can just grab a few items and go, and there's a really great buy-in with the kids. Also, it's really fun, so it's a really great way to have like a good time when you're teaching. And I find it's a very good way to have small interactions with students on a daily basis, so I can do some informal assessments of both listening and their spoken French. So I generally like to start with quel temps fait-il? I like to ask students, what's the weather like? Just to get them talking. It's a very familiar thing that we do in every class, and it just breaks the ice a little bit every single class. Um, a lot of times it turns into, I can see a bird, I can see a flower, and I say, well, what is that en français? Like, use some of your French words, and then it turns into practicing some of our vocabulary. And then from there, I like to engage the senses. So we do things like je vois, je sens, j'entends. We say I can see, I can hear, I can smell. And once we have crops in our garden, we can use I can taste. Because connections are made around food. And connections can be made around speaking a common language. So I like to make those connections between food and language. I teach a lot of food vocabulary, and then I've been teaching a lot of garden and environmental vocabulary so that it's something that is going to be highly used by the students so that they stop asking questions like, why am I learning this? I would never use it. The discussions I find tend to be a little bit more authentic as well. So, on to my next one here. I like to start with my primary students. I've been doing a lot of reading stories outdoors. Story time, I find students tend to get a little bit fidgety, but when we're outdoors, we have a little bit more engagement, and a little bit of noise is a little less disruptive. The last story that I did with my students was La chenille qui fait les trous. This one is The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Kids are very familiar with the story in English, so it's very easy to create those connections to French and showing them that there's a whole world of books out there that they can read in multiple languages. So the next picture there is signage from a community garden project that I'm involved in, and we made a point of including multiple languages on all of our signage. And this is something that we'd like to include in our school garden at the school that I'm working for, just to show that you can learn about different foods and different cultures and different in multiple languages. So the school garden gives you those opportunities to practice all 4 parts of the French curriculum. So the project that you see here, I had my grade 8s actually writing a storybook for my grade 1 students. So in addition to practicing their listening and spoken French, I had them built like structuring sentences and doing some reading and writing. And now we're providing leadership opportunities for our grade 8s to read these stories to some of our younger students. And hopefully that will inspire our younger students to be language learners. There's a lot of opportunities for extension as well. So you can do things like journal entries. You can have someone draw a picture if they're struggling with writing their journal fully in French. And you can do a lot of collaborative activities in the garden. And then on to my next slide. One of the best things I like about teaching French in the garden spaces is it gives them a lot of freedom of movement. So I have both fast-paced outdoor activities, and I have some nice slow-paced garden activities. One of the favorites at the school right now is my matchup game. So you can see the picture of the girls here. There's a picture of a flower and one of our vocabulary words. So I have my students with a picture. They have to go chase down their word that is written on the other card. So I send everyone with a word out into the field, and then everyone has to run and find their vocabulary word, and I switch it up based on different types of vocabulary. And the nice thing about this one it is very low prep. I can just walk into the classroom with my cards, and all the kids know we're going outside. They get really excited about it. And when if it's a bit too hot outside or everyone's getting a little tired, we can switch it up into some nature inspired art. So you can see in the bottom right picture there, I give the kids a vocabulary word, and they have to use found items around the garden, and they have to recreate that word in a mosaic. And then we take a look at it and see if they found the definition for their words. And then the girls on the lower left, those are my grade 1s. They're still learning some of their reading. So we start with pictures. And then once they've learned the pictures and then we do the spoken word definitions, then we move on to the written words. So it's a really good way of scaffolding and building up language skills. So I've created a whole list of outdoor activities, both like fast-paced games and calming games and artistic games that I've been practicing throughout my experience the last few months teaching French. And if anybody's interested in something like that, I can share that with you. You can just connect with us, and I will provide all of that info for you. And I think that's it for me.
All right. Thanks, Melissa, Linda, Lindsay. It's great to hear some of the work that you're doing with schools and with our teacher candidates. Now we're at our question comment period. Just to get us warmed up, I drew on some of your comments in the registration. So you had an opportunity to offer some questions and comments during the registration, and these are some of the main themes that emerged. So people had some questions around funding, um, gardening support, like practical gardening support, in particular around like, native plant gardening or edible perennial gardening around the schoolyard, partnership opportunities with post-secondary institutions and local nonprofits, and then advocacy and what is the best way to market these types of programs. So I'm going to see here if we have I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and I'm going to open it up to questions or comments. Yeah, Jillian.
I'm very curious because I'm a passionate earth person. Mother Earth nourishes me, provides everything that I need. My garden provides me with everything. And in my classroom, I just finished up as we celebrate First Nation Month in June, the Three Sisters. Parents was so excited and everybody take home their Three Sisters plan to report back in September. But my struggle is, if this is so beneficial for learning, why the school boards don't provide space? And educators have to struggle to go through all these grants and all these hustle. If it's so vital, if it's so important, why build schools with tarmac with nothing to do? Why not provide a space where this can be incorporated instead of us have to go through this hustle? For years, I've been trying. And the pushbacks is so much. It's easy said than done. So if it's so valuable, as the person from, I don't remember, the lady that said she's from Simcoe, if it's so vital, why not provide a space? Why does educator have to go through all these hoops and struggles and stress? We have enough to do already. So what's the deal, or how does that come about? Because I've been in a new school for the past 3 years. All the kids have is Timex and sand. There's nothing. And just to get a box to plant some seed, it's like, oh, you have to fill out this paper, you have to fill out this, you have to do that. So what's the politics behind it? Like, if it's so vital, why not open the space and make it possible? That's my biggest.
Thank you for Jillian for
Ah.
sharing that with us. I think you're addressing a core issue here. I think when a lot of us, when we've been talking about our school gardening, and when we do school gardening, we use that word gardening broadly. Sometimes some of the schools that we've shown up to, that's all there is lawn and tarmac and pits of sand. Um, and we have to actually bring in materials and plants and pots and things like this to build raised beds, temporary beds, because they need all kinds of paperwork to fill out in order to make any amendments to the grounds and so on and so forth. So one of our approaches has been to really expand our conception of what gardening is and how we can do gardening activities in the school to get around some of these hoops that you've described. The other strategy that we're building here, that we're working towards, is that ecosystem approach, so that it's not just on one single teacher. And that's what we're trying to do with webinars like this and through our school food working table, is bring together different people who are passionate about this and build the case, and also get in touch with the decision makers. So I'd be curious to know what your school board trustees would have to say about that question. I think school board trustees have the power of policy in
Mm.
terms of, priorities at the school, but also procedures. But there's also, something that we don't often think about, is how we talk and build coalitions among teachers and the custodial staff and parents and administrators, and bringing everyone together so that we can identify some of these barriers and we can meaningfully address them together. And so that's really what we're trying to do through the Farm Lab and through our Simcoe County School Food Table, is building that collective power so that we can remove some of these barriers and make it easier. Because as you said, it is so, and I think all of us here would agree that there's so many benefits of what we're doing.
Yeah, because I am passionate about that. And my class, and even that, he said, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to make sure the soil. Of course, I know that. But with all the pushbacks, it's hard to even get the joy out of it. So, my next question is, I have a bunch of questions, sorry, but it's something that's triggers something that's very important to me. It's like, how the lady mentioned the 4 Ps, like the provision, the production, the preparation, the pedagogy, and all these things. I'm in kindergarten, and kindergarten is busy. Getting out from behind the walls is so vital. It's part of we go to the playground winter, summer, all year round, the full circle. So moving forward, how, by working in collaboration with the person that represents Simcoe County, how do one or someone like me have you come to a school that can educate or guide or build on those strategies in order to incorporate this such vital, such unique piece of exploring learning? As you can see, math, science. As I mentioned, when I was in Montreal, what the French teacher said, that was my daily routine. We're out in the garden, we sow a seed, we eat our seeds, we make our lunch from our garden. This is such an amazing learning piece. So moving forward, how do you and the board able to collaborate with schools, especially in this area, to bring this to some kind of tangible learning?
Great.
Thank you.
So, real quick, for those of you who are wondering how you can partner and how we can collaborate, so through our website at farmlab.lakeheadu.ca, maybe we can get that in the chat. We have an intake form and emails there, our contact information, and any number of us here on the team at the Farm Lab team are happy to connect with you to support school gardening or school programs happening in your school. So what we do is we set up a call, we come visit, we work out a strategy with you to try to support you in this work that you're doing and leveraging the resources that we can through the university and through the community. And then through that, building that community of practice so that we can be there as an ongoing supportive ecosystem.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to connecting with you.
Looking forward to. Thank you.
Are there other questions, comments?
Maybe I'll just say I put some information in the chat about a current grant that's available for schools that are interested in applying for funding to support garden beds or food literacy work, especially if you have a school meal program. So if you already have a breakfast or snack program through Eat Well to Excel or student nutrition programs, the Nourish to Flourish is through Sustain Ontario and Farm Boy, and it's been open for a few weeks now, and the deadline is actually this Friday. But it's a pretty straightforward application, and there's small, medium, or large grants. And so if you have yourself or others that are interested and have some ideas, you can apply for some funding. And if you have a community member that's a supporter of the school, that person could assist with doing the grant writing on behalf of the school to help make it happen. Again, if there's trying to build an ecosystem and ask for some help to do some of that grant writing, might be a good way to start building a team for this work. So I'll put it in the chat again. Thanks.
And I noticed in the chat there was a question about, is this Simcoe County District School Board wide or just individual schools? And currently we go school by school. We respond to passionate teachers who reach out to us. We are interested in what a school board policy might look like around school gardens and how that can help facilitate school gardening and other school food programs. We also recognize there's, I think, 4 different school boards in our area that operate different schools. There's also an Indigenous education authority that coordinates Indigenous education programs that happen in Indigenous schools. So there's a number of local educational authorities as well as provincial curriculum and provincial education authorities. And then the National School Food Program is federal funding. So it's a bit of a complicated governance situation. Although we do have examples of school boards across Canada and other jurisdictions that are doing really great things on school food. So we're not starting from scratch. There's lots of inspiration to draw on. And I think as a community working together, both locally, but also broader through these broader coalitions, that we can start addressing some of these systemic barriers and policies and procedures that seem to get in the way of what almost all of us or all of us think is a good thing, which is kids growing food, eating food in schools. Hard to argue with that. And maybe I'll, with that, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to share screen again, and we'll bring us home here, Heather.
Great. Thanks, Jacob. So just want to let you know, as Jacob mentioned at the beginning, this is part of a series of webinars that the School Food Working Table is offering. And in the fall, if you're interested in talking to the trustees that are the decision makers within the various school boards within Simcoe, and also the Student Nutrition Ontario Central East, folks that are responsible for the school breakfast and snack programs, and thinking about ways that this work might integrate into those programs. We're going to be hosting a webinar with them as a panel. So they'll talk about the work that's happening around school food in a few different school board districts. I'm not sure which they will be yet, but everybody who's attending this call tonight will be on the list to be notified of that. So you'll be able to ask some questions in September from those folks. So it'd be great if you can come back and ask these questions again. And the School Food Working Table will be meeting, our first meeting in the fall is September 4th. And you'll be able to hear more about some projects that are happening in the area, and also there in the works is a sort of a working group for Simcoe County trying to get together to build more relationships with the school boards to talk about these issues on an ongoing way. So this is a group, that working table, that will try to do this advocacy together. And then if you're interested in more hands-on things, Jacob will talk more about the farm lab and what's coming up there, but also you could just, if you're not already working in a school, if you're a community member, definitely reach out to the school near you and find out about the school gardens and potentially volunteer, especially in the summer. If there are things happening, that's often a challenging time to keep those gardens going. And Eat Well to Excel, our student nutrition programs, are the breakfast and snack programs in the schools. So that's another way you can be involved. And thanks.
Right, and if anyone is in the, and I know from our registration, about 2/3 of you are from the Simcoe County area. So if you're local to us, we wanted to invite you to, or even if you're not, you're welcome to join us at our community open house we're having at the Farm Lab on Sunday, July 13th, 10 to 12. There'll be more information on our website. You can contact us through the website there, farmlab.lakeheadu.ca. We also do weekly drop-ins at the Farm Lab, and we have local teachers and community members join us there to kind of see our site, engage in some of those hands-on practices and modeling activities, and also to share some resources, seeds and plants and other things that you can take to your school. We have a WhatsApp group we use to communicate, or you can email. We also have an intake form on our website. So that's for teachers. Our programs are free for the community. So we also have our YouTube channel where we've been posting some more how-to videos around how to do some of these activities we're describing. We also have a community film project that we've published, a trilogy documenting our beginning season together. And we're always open to hearing from you as well, and your ideas and how you'd like to grow school food. All right. With that, thank you, everybody, and happy seeding. We'll be on the call for another few minutes here if you wanted to stick around and chat, but that'll end our formal component of the evening. And we look forward to connecting and growing with you soon. Peace.
Thanks, everyone.